Radio Show.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in today to the 25th Hour Radio Show here on Monster Radio AM 1150. I am your host, Rob Fairless, and on the phone with me today is U.S. Army veteran, mixed martial arts fighter, and current Impact Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion Bobby the Dominator Lashley. Bobby, thanks for taking time out of your day to join me on the show.
My pleasure, man.
So, Bobby, if you don't mind, let's go back in time a second and talk about your beginnings. Just to give my listeners a little background information about you, what age were you when you first started getting involved with wrestling, and what was the motivating factor to even take up the sport?
Well, I started amateur wrestling when I was about in the 7th grade, and the reason why I actually took to wrestling at the beginning was because I was just an athlete. I played sports. I played everything. I was a football player. I was a star on the football team as a 7th grader, and I was really close with my football coach. And after football season was over, I was like, all right, let's go play basketball. And for our school, we didn't have basketball for 7th graders. So I was kind of like just wandering around just trying to figure out what to do. And my wrestling coach was my football coach was a wrestling coach. So he was like, hey, man, just come and try it out. Take a look at it. If you like it, you stay. If you don't, you don't. Nothing lost. So, I mean, with that, I said I'd try it out, and I tried it out. And I think my first year I went like 13-1. I was just a really athletic kid. So when they started teaching me wrestling, I just really picked up on it right away.
So I was going over some of the information that's available on the internet about you last night, and I was reading over how successful you were in college wrestling at Missouri Valley, winning a few national titles in your time there. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
But I came across some information about you that I felt compelled to include in this interview, and that is that you were a United States Army veteran, like I mentioned earlier, and during that time you were an active duty soldier. You were part of the U.S. Army wrestling team. So after saying all that, I guess my question to you is this: what made you decide to volunteer to serve in the United States Army, and how did you end up on the United States Army wrestling team?
Well, first off, my dad was in the Army, so I'm an Army brat, I guess that's what you want to say. My dad was in the Army, my uncle was in the Marines, my other uncle was in the Marines and in the Army, and then my sister went to the Army. I mean, we have a military family. My family's from Panama originally, so the military is what brought my family over to the United States. So my dad has a little special place in his heart for the military, and we all did. I mean, he took care of us, paid the bills and everything like that. Traveled around the world, lived in Germany for 4 years. So after I graduated college, I had a degree, and that was one thing that I talked to my coach a lot about, because I kept telling him. My coach was really excited about what I did in college. I was a 4-time All-American, 3-time national champion. My coach was like, and when I won my last national championship, I was asking my coach, what next? What next? You know, because if I played football, I'd be in the NFL. Played baseball, I'd be in NBA, or in Major League Baseball. But with wrestling, we really didn't have that professional sports league. So it's like either you keep trudging it out and trying to make it to the Olympics, which is a tough thing to do because you have paid bills and everything like that, but you have to train full-time, and there's a lot going on. So my coach ended up getting in contact with the Army wrestling coach, and the Army wrestling coach said, we'd love to have Bobby on the deal, but this program is for soldiers. So what he can do is he can enlist, and then he can try out for the team. And I was pretty confident with my wrestling ability. So when I enlisted, I came in there and challenged for the team and made it on the team. It's called the World Class Athlete Program. So it's an incredible program where you're soldier first, of course. We're always a soldier first. But you have an opportunity that my job was to train at the Olympic Training Center full time.
So speaking of training for the Olympics during that period, you kind of had a knee injury there for being in the wrong place, basically at the wrong time, man. You were in a bank while the bank was robbed. Are you comfortable discussing what happened that day and how you got the injury?
Oh yeah. I'm an easy person to talk to. I'll talk about anything and anytime. It was one of those things where, like you said, I mean, that's close. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. You never know when something like that's going to happen. And when I go over the story afterwards, I mean, it's bittersweet. I mean, during the story, I'll tell you the bad part of the story. The bad part of the story, I walked into a bank on a Saturday morning, and there was a line. So there's one single line, and then you go up to one of the 3 tellers. So you go up to the front and get in one of the tellers. And I was at the back of the line when I walked in. after I walked in, I heard everybody screaming, and I mean, this happened really quick. So I heard like a boom noise like that, and then screaming and pow like that. It happened so quick. So what happened when I came into the bank, the guys kicked the door down, and one of the guys was holding his gun straight forward. Now, I don't think he intended to try to shoot and kill me, but he had the gun aimed straight to the back of my head. He was maybe about 4 or 5 feet away. And I think the only thing that really saved me is that everybody in front of me, because I was looking forward, everybody in front of me, the television, everybody, they started screaming. So when they started screaming, I turned to look where they screamed, and the bullet kind of went right over my shoulder.
Wow.
I took a dive down to the ground, and of course, a lot of those places, they don't have like the padded carpet and everything like that, so it was like an industrial carpet over concrete. So when I hit the ground, it busted my knee open, and I had surgery. I had one surgery. Well, the world team, the Olympic trials was in 8 months. So when I busted my knee and went to the hospital because my knee swelled up real huge as a softball, the doctor told me, you're going to have to go through surgery, and he said you're going to be out for 6 months. But in my eyes, I was telling myself, I was like, 6 months, 8 months before the tournament, I'm not the average person. I'm going to be ready in 3 months. I had it all done in my head where I was going to be able to get back into it and get ready. So I had the brace on, and then waited for a couple months, and then about a month later, there was a bad infection that happened, swelling and everything like that. So they had to put me in surgery again. After that second surgery, they were like, well, this one's a bad one because we're going to have to cut the back also because of the infection, and we have to do all this other stuff. So it was a mess. And at that point, I was 6 months out, and they're telling me that you're not even going to be able to start rehab for another 2 months. So at that point, it was not too optimistic looking at the tournament. So
yeah. So how did you turn that negative into a positive and break into the professional wrestling circuit?
Prayer. Prayer. Yeah,
Prayer is a powerful thing, man.
It's a powerful thing, man. Because I put this all the time. I like the quote, but the quote means so much more to me. And it's the harder I work, the luckier I get. And that's the one thing that I went by. I work hard. I don't, I've always went to wrestling matches, pro wrestling, amateur wrestling, MMA fights, anything. I've always went to those competitions with the mind frame of saying, there's no way somebody could have trained harder than me. There's a possibility that they could have trained as much as me, maybe if they're superhuman, but they're not going to train harder than me. When I was sitting on my couch after the second surgery, and I had this leg brace on, straight leg cast on, so I couldn't even bend my knee. When I had to go to the bathroom, I had to roll the couch and to the bathroom. So that's how bad it was. And I'm sitting on the couch. Then I get a call afterward. That's the complete blue. Hey, Bobby Lashley, this is Gerald Briscoe with the World Wrestling Entertainment. That was the point where I kind of pulled the phone off my ear and kind of looked at it like, who's doing this? I was like, whoever's doing this junk is not funny at all. But the thing that happened is Kurt Angle had come early on to the Olympic Training Center, and he was doing a vignette for the WWE, and he saw me there, and a couple other people saw me, and they were like, man, Bobby has a great look. He's a good dude. He's in the Army. He has a lot of athletes that he can really use for wrestling, so maybe we should give him a chance. So that's what he said at that time. That was probably about 4 months before this happened. So now when he's calling me, this was sheer out of the blue, because I lost contact with Kurt, lost contact with them, so I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, he said we wanted to bring you up, want to take you out, want to give you an interview, and possibly bring you into the show. And the whole time I was like, man, this is crazy. Because I was a wrestling fan growing up. I never thought that I would actually make it into professional wrestling, because that's like watching football. You watch football to enjoy the football, not saying, oh, I want to play for the Broncos. It's not what it was. So I enjoyed watching, but I didn't think there was a possibility of actually being on. And then when he told me that, I was like, okay. And he was like, well, but we need you to come here next month. Or no, we need you to come here right away. And that right away, I kept on trying to back it up, because I was like, I can't come right now. I can't even walk. I haven't walked in 2 months. So I stalled him out for a little bit, And as soon as I got off the phone with him, I ran straight up to Olympic Training Center, and I started my rehab. And I was rehabbing twice a day. They were telling me, you can't rehab because you're actually doing more damage than good. And I was like, stop talking to me like I'm a normal person. I need this knee fixed right away because I need to get up there. And because it was one door closed, another door open. And I'm not gonna turn down this opportunity. I said, the whole time I've been training, going through college and everything like that, I always knew that I was different. There's something I had a bigger plan. So when this call came, I was like, man, this might be my plan. I trained for wrestling for 20 years. He wants to put me on the largest stage in the world right now. I said, this might be my calling. So I was like, I'm there. I'll do it.
So, man, of course, anyone who follows the sport of professional wrestling knows your name, knows the huge matches you've been involved with. And like I mentioned earlier, you're the current Impact Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion. But I have to fit this in somewhere in the interview. You're also involved in mixed martial arts. Why branch out into MMA when you're already successful in the wrestling? I mean, is it the money? Is it the adrenaline rush from hand-to-hand combat? A little bit of both there?
The reason why I do it is that originally it was a deal. I mean, I guess this is stuff that I guess I can talk about now. There was a time that WWE and UFC were going to go together. There was a time that they were actually doing business, shaking hands and stuff like that. And with that being said, they were kind of trying to figure out who would be on the wrestling side to go over. And of course, my hand was up because that's just the kind of person I am. But on top of that, I wanted to fight before I got into wrestling. I was wrestling at the Olympic Training Center, and a lot of the guys that I wrestled with were starting to make that move into fighting. And I watched them, like Cain Velasquez and Josh Koscheck and Josh Plum Thompson. A lot of these guys, they were making that move. And I was going to the camp with them, and I was like, man, and I watched them while I was wrestling. And then, I fell into some times in wrestling where I kind of pulled away. And when I pulled away out of WWE, that's when I was like, man, I'm still in good shape. I'm still ready to go. Like, why not try it now? Older, but I think my body's still up to par, and my martial art that I'm mastered at, the black belt that I have, is still good to go, which is wrestling. So I jumped into it. And when I jumped into it, it was really one of those things of saying, you know what? I love pro wrestling, and if I go and fight and do pro wrestling, it's going to kind of change the game, and it's going to give a little bit more validity to wrestling, to let these people that watch pro wrestling say, oh, that's just fake, or those guys aren't tough. I'm showing them, look, no, we're athletes just like every other person out here, and we're tough athletes. So I wanted to do it to kind of prove and set a statement there. So I was like, I'm going to take one fight. And then I did one fight. And then when I did one fight, I went back to camp, and everybody was like, man, you did. And I didn't think I did great. I was frightened out there. But I was like, man, I'm going to get another fight in. And then I did another fight. And then at that point, the buzz started coming around, and they were like, Strike Force came in, and Strike Force was like, yeah, we want to bring you on. We've got a contract here. And a lot of these big fights started coming into play. So I was like, man, well, I might sit down and continue training and actually make a career out of this fighting thing. So I did, and I enjoyed it.
So do you ever worry about one injury maybe in one of these in wrestling, or one injury in MMA ending your career in both of them?
Yeah, but I can worry about that, and I can also worry about going to the bank and getting shot at and taking a dive down to the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, and that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from the bank. I drove, and I was driving across country. I don't know what I was doing. I was going somewhere, and I pulled it to a gas station, and the gas station, the pump wasn't working, or it wasn't taking my card, and it said, come inside, see the attendant. And I was like, man, I really don't want to go inside. But then I was like, man, if I go here, and it was kind of like one of those kind of seedy kind of places where, it was one of those places where it's kind of a great neighborhood. So I was like, man, I really don't want to go there because I still had that kind of PTSD, that little shell shock from before. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go in there.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I sat down in my car for a second. I just sat there for about a minute. And I got up out of my seat, and I was like, you know what? I said, I'm not going to live my life in fear, because at that bank, if I didn't turn, I got shot in the back of the head. It was over. And that's what I was thinking when I was down on the ground. When I was down on the ground, I had my face down on the ground, my chest down on the ground, and I had this, there's nothing but women in this bank. I was like, man, I'm in the position of disadvantage more than anything. Laying on my face, on my chest, on the ground. I was like, this guy wanted to murder me. I'm right there. Boom, gone. And I'm the only threat in this entire bank because it's my winner. And I kept on, this kept going over and over in my head. Is this how it's supposed to end? Is this how it's supposed to end? And I kept questioning myself, is this how it's supposed to end? Because this sucks if this is supposed to end like this. And that's where everything changed for me. I trained, I just finished sparring, like an hour and a half training right now with a kid that's 26 years old, that's trying to make it in the UFC. They called me up to go do it because they know it. I'm ready to go. And right now, in my life, I'm doing everything and anything I can because at some point in time, I'm not going to be able to do any of this anymore. I don't want to be one of the armchair quarterbacks that sit back and say, man, he should have punched him or he should have kicked him or he should have did this when I'm watching the UFC. I'm like, no, I get out there and do it. Anything that I want to do, if I have the slightest thought of wanting to do something, I'm going to go do it. And that's why I did it with MMA. I was like, man, I'm a competitor. I'm still able to beat these guys up. I can go do it. I'm going to go do it. So I did it. And everything else that I go by, I had that same mentality.
So you're also an entrepreneur outside of the combat profession. You own a few businesses. So I guess you've thought about your future after wrestling and MMA. What do you got going on? What's the businesses that you own?
Yeah, I own a gym, and that's one thing that I do. And then I do a lot of flipping of houses. When I was in WGGH, the same person that got me in, Gerald Briscoe, was telling me, he was like, man, what do you do with your money? He used to always sit down with me on the side and just pull me outside. What are you doing with all this money you make? I don't know. You buy a Hummer? like everyone else. He goes, no. And I'm not that person. I'm not very frugal. I don't spend money. I spend money on my kids, and that's it. And he started talking to me about real estate. And then I started doing more research on real estate. So with all the research that I did, I kept buying and flipping.
So are you a big social media guy? I mean, do you have your own favorite social media sites where fans can find you hanging out on more than others?
Well, I'm not a big tweeter. Everybody wants me to tweet. I used to tweet. I'm not a big tweeter. I like Instagram. Because you can see a picture, you can see what I'm doing, you can see how ridiculously sick I am still at my age doing some of this stuff. And I like to show different things. I like to show people I did a post yesterday where I was doing just some TRX work because everybody expects me to go in the gym and pick up a whole bunch of weight and squat it or bench it. Yeah, I can do that, but that's not going to create longevity in my career. Because what creates longevity is to strengthen up my body. So I do like yoga stuff. I do a lot of TRX stuff, body balancing stuff, functional training. I do a lot of different stuff. So I throw that stuff out there, and then I joke around and then I show stuff on my kids. So that's probably the place where you're going to see the most of me is on Instagram. And then sometimes I just kind of send that to my Facebook page and send that to my Twitter page.
So are there any upcoming events you're going to be a part of that the listeners might be interested in knowing about?
Absolutely. I got to go out to Hollywood. There's some different movie roles that I've been questioned about, so I want to go out there and kind of test the waters out there. I've been in about 4 or 5 movies right now, just little small parts. But
Dude,
I kind
you're
of
all
want
over
to do
the
something
place.
a little bigger.
You're just all over the place, aren't you, man?
And then sometimes when things come at me, my friends are like, "You're going to do that too?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to do that too. Why not? Why wouldn't I?" I mean, there's all kinds of. My next big project right now is I work with this company called Future Legend. They're an incredible company. It's a T-shirt company, but the thing about them is that, for me, I run a kids program and I do Future Legend stuff with them. So, I call the kids Future Legends because all these little kids are growing up, and I'm teaching them wrestling, I'm teaching them strength and conditioning. I'm just making them more athletic kids. So I like to name Future Legends. So I do that with the kids, and I'm gonna actually take that crusade and travel around the United States and go to different cities, go to different high schools, stuff like that, and find the next Future Legends. So I'm gonna be doing that. That's my next project that I'm starting. I'll probably do a few more fights. I really want to hold both belts. I want to hold the Bellator belt and the Impact belt. And WWE is doing some big things right now. I don't know what the future lies, but for me, I love pro wrestling. I love to stay active. I'm just trying to do everything that I can, and I just want to, I'm hoping to go out to Body Power, which is out in the UK, and just represent my supplement company, or I don't know. It's always out there. I try to keep people updated with my Instagram. So. That's
Well,
probably
you've got a
the
lot of
best
stuff
way.
to update about, it seems anyway.
Mhm.
Is there any final words you'd like to say to your supporters out there who are listening to the show right now before we wrap things up?
I go by two different philosophies. One of my favorite ones is, like I said before, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And then the other part is, like, you know what? I try to tell kids when I go to different high schools and stuff like that, because they see me on TV, they see me doing different things. They're like, man, this guy's crazy. Look, I'm an ordinary person. I just do it. I do extraordinary things. That's all. I don't set the bar for myself. I do extraordinary things. If you're not making yourself great at something, I don't care if it's playing chess, swimming, I don't care what it is. You have to be great at something. So you got to find what your greatness is. And that's what I try to do on a daily basis. I try to find my greatness.
Well, Bobby, once again, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day to join me on the show. It's been a pleasure, man, speaking to you. Get back to dominating.
Right on, man. That's what I plan to do.